For a lot of people, flying is a really scary thing. That fear can come from a few different factors. You've heard stories about planes that have crashed, even though it's rare. You're going to be in this metal tube a few miles above the ground. And you're putting your life in the hands of people you don't even know. Part of flight attendant training is learning how to handle a passenger who has anxiety about flying. If someone steps on the plane and tells them, "Hey, I'm pretty nervous about this," they have ways to deal with it. They need to keep that passenger comfortable and everyone on the plane safe. One thing a fearful passenger can do is ask to meet the pilot. This might not always be possible, but in many cases the pilot is happy to meet a nervous flyer and provide some reassurance. Then, a few minutes later when the plane is taking off, you can think, "This feels a little scary, but I met the person who's flying the plane, and they seem to know what they're doing." But takeoff is just the first part. You still have to get back to Earth. What if the plane is landing and no one, not even the pilot, knows that anything is wrong? Until you hit the ground. Real people in unreal situations.
The eerie silence when I walked in, and he's just staring at me.
I was like, "Hello, like, are you okay?" And then I had to tell him it was me.
There was just blood everywhere.
They're shouting, they're screaming, they're being hit by bullets, they're hitting the ground.
And in that moment, I literally thought, this is how I die.
Everything changed then.
And I just thought to myself, this isn't happening.
Every single story deserves to be heard.
I'm Scott Johnson, and this is What Was That Like? Prior to this, were you ever nervous at all about flying?
I did have a fear of flying, yes. It wasn't super severe, I wouldn't say, but I took the job knowing that they did fly, and I was hoping to overcome my fears with flying. And yeah, so I did have a fear of flying.
That's something that a lot of people have, but it's interesting that you pursued a job that required that. Are you typically the kind of type that's like, yeah, I'm afraid of it, but let's just face it. Let's just hit it head on, right?
Yes, I'm not going to let it stop me from traveling because I love traveling. So
this happened about 2.5 years ago, and so you were flying pretty regularly back then?
Yes, so probably around twice a week. It depended on the work schedule, obviously. I would say I was part-time, and I probably flew, I would say, 4 to 5 times a month.
And what was your work? What were you doing?
I was a surgical assistant for a medical facility, and we just flew around to their separate locations in the northwestern part of the U.S. They had several locations.
And when you say surgical assistant, it sounds like you'd be the one to hand the surgeon the tools that they ask for while they're operating on someone?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. See, I figured that out really easily.
Well, I was making my way up in the company. I was actually, at that time, I was a sterilizing assistant. And then you make your way up through the company, and you're all the way up to a surgical assistant.
And what kind of surgery was this?
This was cataract surgery, yes.
Okay, so cataract removal, okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, though, because usually I think of surgery happening in a hospital, so you would just stay local. Why didn't they just hire local people? Why did they have to fly you around to these various locations?
I'm actually not really sure on why they didn't hire just local. It's still a question I have, but I couldn't tell you why it was more productive for them to buy these jets and fly people to facilities. I don't know. Yeah.
And so you weren't flying commercial. The company had these planes. They had their own pilots and everything then.
Yes. They were like a 10-seater twin-engine jet. And they had 3 of them.
I guess there's money in cataracts.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and was this usually just an overnight and then back home?
No, it was just a full day. It'd probably be about a 10 to 12-hour day if it was flying. So it would be, we'd start our day at 6:30, getting on our flight, and we'd get home probably around, could be anywhere between 6:30 and 7:30, but never overnight.
So let's talk about what happened on that day. What kind of plane was this, or how many passengers were on the plane?
There was 9 passengers, and it's just a Cessna twin-engine airplane jet, not the propeller kind. And it was just like any other day. I was actually on call that day and got called in that morning. I've never have been called in, and that was the first time that I actually got called in that day.
So there were 9 people, and these are all people that you work with?
Yes.
So you knew all of them?
Yes. I knew all of them. The plane was so full that there was actually one of the staff that had to sit in the cockpit next to the pilot. So it was a full flight. I'd say it was about a roughly 45-minute flight. And we got on the plane about 6:30 a.m. And you could either listen to podcasts while you're on the plane or a good movie. Actually, the pilot that day, excellent pilot. He's one of my favorite. Just very smooth takeoff, very smooth landings. He is just one of my favorite pilots, and it was a very uneventful flight. No turbulence. Beautiful day. Clear skies. So we went in for a typical landing. I was putting away all my gear into my backpack, and we coming in for a landing and hovered over the runway a little longer than I thought. And since he was such a great pilot, I thought the plane had already touched down because his landings, I'm telling you, were so smooth. But we had not hit, and we were hovering. Then it hit, and it was metal on pavement, if you can imagine, screeching, grinding sounds. It was really loud. And at that moment, everybody looked at each other. The girl in front of me, her seat faces me, so she's actually going backwards. And the look on her face was just sheer terror. And everybody's looking around. I see the girl up in the cockpit. She turns around to look at us, and we're just skidding across the runway and sliding and grinding. The plane actually started to turn slightly to the right, so the left wing was starting to turn. I thought at that point that the airplane was going to start rolling or swinging around, but it somehow corrected itself, and I could see the pilot trying to gain control of the aircraft. But at that point, you don't have any control over an aircraft. All you have is wing control, I'm guessing. And if whatever's happening underneath the airplane isn't down, you have no control.
So this was completely without warning.
Yes. There was no, I'd say, light noises going off, no warning signals, anything. It was totally silent. That whole aircraft was just silent. And I always pay a lot of attention to what's happening in the cockpit because I am a fearful flyer. So I always watch the pilot and what they're doing, and if they're freaking out during the flight, then it's a good indication for me to start freaking out. And I watched as he landed. There was nothing happening on that airplane, no warning signals at all. We slid all the way from when we landed. I would say it was 20 feet. We stopped 20 feet before the end of the runway, and NTSB says, we stopped in the departure lane, so where planes come in to depart. When you see that, I was looking out the cockpit thinking, we're going to keep sliding, and we're going to slide into the ground, and this thing is just going to start flipping, because we were still going so fast.
Do you know how fast you were going when you hit the ground?
The NTSB said that we hit the ground at 164 miles per hour, and it just slid the whole length of the runway.
And what's past the runway? Is it trees or a road, or do you know?
It was just dirt and gravel and brushy stuff. It's a very dry country, deserty kind of out there.
And can you describe how loud was it? What was the sound like inside the plane while you were sliding?
It was very loud. It's really hard to describe the sound unless you've heard metal grinding on pavement. Just a screeching. It's undescribable. If you've ever heard, any sort of metal like dragging under your car while you're driving, I'd say scraping across a pavement, and times that by 10, because we were totally on our belly. Nothing was down.
It seems odd that obviously you landed without the landing gear, without the wheels, but It seems like a plane would have some kind of notification that you're getting too close to the ground.
Correct.
And your landing gear has not been deployed.
Yeah.
What were the other passengers doing? Was there a state of panic?
Everybody was actually very quiet. I mean, everybody's eyes were as big as basketballs, but we were all very quiet, and I feel like our brains were just shutting off and preparing us for the worst. I mean, that's the only way I can explain it, because I thought I was going to die. Like, that was it. We were done. I was actually living out my worst fear of dying in a plane crash. That was it. And it was completely silent on the airplane. Not even alarms going off. I mean, just silent.
And was everyone wearing their seatbelt?
Yes, everybody was wearing their seatbelt.
And while this was happening, what was the pilot? Could you see him?
Yeah.
Was he saying anything?
He wasn't saying anything. I could see him. I was looking out my window and the cockpit window because I was watching us approach the end of the runway. But I kind of was watching him as well. And he was pressing buttons and trying to control the steering wheel, I would say, of the aircraft, keeping it from twisting. But I really don't think pilots have much control if their wheels aren't down and it's just sliding like that. I think he was just trying every angle he possibly could to keep that thing from twisting and turning.
Yeah, I can imagine the pressure on him because, you guys are all in fear for your lives individually, but he's kind of responsible for everyone's life on that plane.
Yes. So it finally reached its stopping position, and he got up out of his seat and he said, "Everybody, you need to get off the plane right now." And I grabbed my bag, and he was opening the door. It was on the left side of the aircraft if I was facing forward. And we all filtered out. I was probably third or fourth off the plane. And as I stepped out, the stairs usually drop down underneath the airplane. They just fell out right onto the pavement, and they don't fall under because we were on our belly of the airplane. And I stepped out and I looked to my left and there is just fire blazing from the back of the plane. And there's a hole in the wing and there's jet fuel just spilling out onto the runway from the wing. And I just ran. I was like, this thing is going to explode. And I ran. I gotta say, I didn't even look back. I was in fight or flight mode and I didn't think about any of the other passengers, which is, not very nice to say, but I don't know. I was just in a really weird state of mind and just ran. And I hear the plane just, I couldn't tell you if it exploded or the front window blew out, but at that point it exploded and I turned around and the whole thing was just totally engulfed. And that was probably close to about 15 seconds after the last passenger exited the airplane.
And was the last passenger off the plane the pilot?
No, it was a girl in the very back of the airplane. Everybody hates that seat. It's actually like across from the bathroom and it's dark and there's no windows. And she was back there and she was, it came very close for her getting off that airplane.
I just have to pursue this line of this question. Was the pilot the first one out?
I can't remember if he was. Either he was the first or the second. He did run off of that thing pretty quickly.
So was he, when you exited, was he already out? You could see him out of the plane?
I have a hard time remembering.
Yeah, you're full of adrenaline and not really.
I feel like he was standing in the cockpit hallway area. I feel like he was standing there, but I know that he wasn't the last one off. He wanted to go back on for his laptop and phone, and the lady that was standing next to him told him not to go back on there because it blew up right after the last person. You got to just leave it. It wasn't like a sinking ship with him. He beamed off there pretty quick.
So where did you go from there?
I called my husband at that point. I could hear the fire trucks and ambulances. They were coming up and usually there will be a call in if planes have no landing gear so that they can spray the runway with foam so the planes don't catch on fire, which they had no warning of that. So they were rushing down the runway. I called my husband at work and I feel so bad because I scared the daylights out of him. He thought we had crashed in the wilderness and he was like, you need to call 911 and get away from the airplane. I was like, no, I think the tower has already called 911 because I hear the ambulances and I just feel really bad. And then I had called my mom and told her what was happening. And then we all just stood around until they put the fire out on the airplane. And then the firefighters and ambulance came over to us and started asking us questions if we were okay. And I, at that point, was sitting down because I just felt so sick, so nauseated. So it must have been all the adrenaline just coming down on me at once. And they took us in the ambulances and some vans to the fire station at that point.
And is this a fire station that's local in that area or is it on the airport grounds?
I believe it's local in the area. Yes. We went to the fire station. They gathered us in a room and they, do you guys need anything? Can we do anything for you? And I feel like everything at this time was very cinematic, very slow motion. I don't remember a lot of it. It's very the time is just really strange. But they had us fill out a report on what happened and then turn it into us. I guess there was some investigators there. We were there probably an hour, and then they said, we need to get you guys out of here because the reporters were starting to show up. And so they filtered us into their fire station area where they keep the fire trucks, and they pulled the vans in there, put us in vans, and then took us to another airport. I don't know what was happening, why they were like pushing us around all these different places, trying to figure out what to do with us. Somebody had said, well, how about we send another airplane to get you guys and bring you back home? And I said, I'm not flying anywhere, first of all. I'll hitchhike home if I have to. I'm not flying.
You had enough of it for that day, huh?
Yeah. And so we went to the other airport and sat there for a while. And I just remember the pilot, he was pacing, and he was going through something. I don't know. And he was just, because it was already coming out on the local news and everything that there was a plane crash. And so from there, they took us to a medical facility that I work for in the area. And we went into the break room, and the owner came out, talked to us, and asked what happened. And he was just in shock at that point. And they were trying to figure out what to do with us. And they figured out that they had some vans for us, and they had some drivers to take us back home, which was probably about 3 hours away.
What kind of message did the owner of the company want to convey at that time? Did he have an explanation, or did he say, don't worry, we're going to take care of any injuries, or how was he handling it?
He handled it very well. He felt really bad for the whole situation, and he asked the pilot, he said, what happened? And the pilot explained to him what he could, and then we explained to him, and he was just kind of in shock. I do have to say, though, the owner said to us, if anybody needs compensation, please let me or your supervisors know. And it's a religious company, so he prayed with us, and then he said, I gotta get back to work, because he's like the main surgeon. So he went on to work.
Were there any actual physical injuries?
Some girls claim to have some back sprains, and there was a couple. It seemed like it happened more in the back of the airplane, because that's where more of the girls have back issues. And they in fact have gone to the doctor for this and have had MRIs and all of that done. And they're working with labor and industry through Washington State to get that taken care of.
Were you under the impression that that's what the owner was talking about as far as compensation? Or, I mean, obviously you'd all just lost a day's work also.
Right. So they did pay us for the day. But that's not what I thought he meant by compensation. I had actually reached out to him and the CEO and asked about the compensation again. And they probably talked to their lawyers, and I'm guessing, and came back and said, that's not what we meant by compensation. What we actually meant was if you needed time off. So it was kind of retracted. Yeah.
He spoke a little too soon before consulting with their attorneys.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's how that went. And they did pay for counseling sessions for all of us for afterwards.
You got home like 3 hours later after this 3-hour ride. What was that evening like?
Oh, I mean, the car ride was really quiet. And then we got back to the airport hangar, and some of our supervisors were there, and they were hugging us and crying. And I was just like, I just want to get out of here. And I just want to go home. Got in my car, went home, which is about a half hour away. And just my kids were all there staring at me. My mom was there. My husband was at work still. I told him there was no use for him to just leave work and come, because it was such a chaotic time, and they would just, I'll see you when you get off work. It was just a really like surreal time, very strange feeling, and everybody was just in shock of what just happened. You know, my sisters were texting me. I had other family members texting me, "Are you okay?" And what happened, there was a rumor that somebody had started, that they had seen the crash from the airport, and he said he didn't see anybody get off the plane and that we all died. And he sent that to my workplace, and everybody was freaking out over there, and it was just chaos. We did get a mass email from the owner. The pilots, this will never happen again. They're sorry about it, and they promise to everybody this is not something that will ever happen again, and in other words. So the technical term I want to say from the NTSB was that the pilot did not ensure the landing gear was extended before landing, and that contributed to the pilot's unstable approach.
Not only the landing gear to put it down, but also the wing flaps slow down the landing, slow down the forward speed of the plane.
Mm-hmm.
And he hadn't done that either.
And I looked this all up on the NTSB because that's where I get all my information from. And the airplane's flaps were likely configured in a takeoff setting, and which that contributes to warning lights not triggering on, if you understand. When all these things when you're going too fast for landing, which the plane was at 164 miles an hour landing, and landing speed is 130 knots, which is, I believe, 110 miles an hour. So when these things are not done correctly, I think that what they're saying is the warning signals do not go off, because the plane doesn't think it's landing. That's why there was no warning lights being issued when we hit the ground or getting close to the ground, because the plane didn't understand that it was landing.
That just seems weird to me. I'm not a pilot, so I have no idea what I'm talking about here. But the plane should have known that, oh, I'm 10 feet off the ground.
Right.
Maybe the wheels should be down. That seems like common sense, right?
Right. And NTSB found no issues with the plane's electrical system or warning system. None of that. They didn't find anything wrong with it.
Did you ever hear anything from the pilot himself?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything from the pilot. It was just, we saw him that day, and then after that, I never heard one thing from him.
He was probably advised to not say anything, I would think.
I think a lot of people were advised not to say anything.
Is he still your favorite pilot?
No. I don't have any favorite pilots anymore.
He lost that status pretty quickly.
Yeah.
When you got that message from the owner, what's your reaction to that? I mean, do you just say, "Oh, well, I'm not flying this anymore," and was the pilot fired?
No. So that email came out, and the pilot was pushed back into flying. And I put in my 2 weeks notice. It was all probably within the same day or within 2 days because I was done with it. They didn't even have the decency to come to us and say, listen, we're going to have him back flying with us. Are you guys okay with that? How do you feel about that? Nothing was said to us. And he was brought back. No explanation. I have no idea why. And I just put in my 2 weeks notice because I can't work for a company that doesn't value their employees.
And there could be obviously the chance that you'd be flying with him again.
Yeah, well, I told them right after. I said, I'm never flying with you guys again. I told my supervisor, I said, do not put me on any flights. And it was even getting hard just riding with people. We would ride in closer locations in vans, large vans, and everybody would take turns driving. And I was like, I don't even want anybody driving me anywhere.
Right. You don't know how good of a driver somebody is either.
Yeah. At that point, I was like, this is too risky for me. I have too big of a family, and I can't risk me dying in a car crash or a plane crash. And so I just walked away from it.
Did everyone file a lawsuit?
No, it was... How many of us? It was 3 to 4 of us did.
Individually?
No, we were together on it. Yeah. So we ended up filing a lawsuit on it. But after a year and a half, 2 years, it took 2 years for the NDSB investigation to finalize their report. And then our lawyers jumped on it and they said, the company is covered. You can't sue for something like this because the pilot is actually a coworker. So we couldn't go any further with it. They just dropped it and said, you have to go through workers' compensation.
What was the claim on the lawsuit?
It was an injury lawyer. So we were just trying to get anything out of them because a lot of us had quit working for them, and just back pay from when we quit. And I mean, just anything to help with other bills that we had. A lot of us have other bills that weren't paid for because working with workers' comp is a nightmare. So we used our own insurance or just paid things outright, such as massage therapy or psychology visits, therapy visits.
I would think for something like this, the company must have been insured.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they have to be.
I mean, not just for the replacement of the destroyed plane, but
right.
for, liability
right.
for having all these employees in a plane crash.
I had asked about compensation, and the reply I got was the cost of the new airplane was too far. It cost too much to replace the airplane to compensate the rest of the employees. So,
wow, just what you wanted to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it just felt like we were a number in a group, and you guys lived, you made it. Be thankful and go back to work. And if you don't want to work here, then see you later. We'll hire new people.
The pilot's still flying. I wonder if the people that are his passengers know the story.
Oh, they know it. Yeah, they're risking their lives. I think those planes should have a big black writing on the outside. Fly at your own risk, because they should know. If I was them, I would not be flying with that company. No, there's no way.
And I would think, too, just from the pilot's perspective, he must have a lot of self-doubt now. I mean, or at least when he went back to flying anyway.
Right.
Thinking, man, what if I do that again?
Right. I mean, I don't think he'll ever make that mistake again. I'm sure he will always triple, quadruple check to make sure that his landing gear is in fact down. But who's to say if he'll forget something else or another pilot will forget something else? I just don't think they're held to enough standards because they fly privately.
Have you flown again since then?
I have flown. Yep. I did have to obtain some medication, some Xanax to be able to fly again. I've never ever had to take that before, but it does help with flying. I still get really, really nervous. I get nervous when the plane lands, but I'm not going to let it stop me from getting out there and seeing the world,
That's impressive. Some people would say, no, never getting on a plane again. And I can imagine, certainly at the landing, I mean, everyone on the plane that has never been in a crash, always, I mean, when I fly, it's always kind of tense up and wait for that hit, and then, okay, good, we're down and we're safe once again.
Yes. And with all these like plane accidents happening, it's just been crazy. I'm not going to let it stop me though.
Did you have any psychological symptoms or an actual diagnosis like PTSD?
I had a couple psychologists help me and they said I did have PTSD just because I used to have really bad night terrors from it. A couple times I'd wake up just running through my house from a dream, like a sleepwalking, but running, because I was having these terrible dreams. And then they started to go away fewer and fewer. And it just, I would say more so just now, I really wouldn't say I have PTSD anymore, just because my dreams have really subsided from it. But a year after that, it was pretty, I would have pretty bad dreams. And I worked a lot with a psychologist.
Did you feel your treatment is complete then?
I think so. I mean, I would have liked to have continued at least, a couple times a month. But the cost is just astronomical with them. And I don't feel I should have to pay for something that a company did to me. So I let it go and, I work things out kind of on my own. I have, my own faith and I've been able to do that on my own.
Do you still do the same type of work?
No, I'm not working at all anymore. I kind of felt like I had only been working there for 8 or 9 months and I was off taking care of my children for 8 years beforehand. And I went back to work for 8 or 9 months and this happened. So I think I'll just stay home with my kids. I just feel that maybe with a lot of your people I've had on podcasts, when you see death coming for you, I think it changes you as a person. And this has totally changed me as a person and how I view things now. And I used to, I don't want to say I take more chances, but I feel like life is obviously short. So let's just do it. If something makes you happy, just do it, because it's not worth just waiting around for, whatever may happen. I feel like I take not dangerous chances, but just more better chances in life. And it's hard to explain, but just seeing things differently. And
would you say it sounds like you're living life deliberately now?
Yeah.
And enjoying the present and this moment.
That's exactly. Yeah. It's hard to explain, but that hits it right on the head. So, you can't just wait around for things to happen. Just do it and don't fly private airplanes. Yeah. Don't fly privately unless you really know the pilot.
Right. All right. Crazy story. I'm glad you made it through.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
I know for some people, going through something like this would mean they might never fly again. It's like, okay, I used up all my good luck on that one, not going to do that anymore. And that would be a completely valid position. Sometimes with stories like this, I get comments or questions about the legal aspect, and that part is still ongoing, so none of that can be talked about right now. Maybe in a few years, if we do this as a flashback episode, Elena can talk about how it all turned out. Now, I want to talk about something I've seen come up a few times. This has to do with reviews in Apple Podcasts. You might notice I almost never ask for ratings or reviews. I hear other shows constantly saying, don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating and review, and it just gets tiresome, so I don't do that. But a lot of people click and leave a nice review anyway, and I do appreciate that. But what confuses me is when someone will go and write a review and comment or even ask a question about a particular episode. Like this one. This review was just left recently. The subject is Victoria's dad. And the review said this: my main question is, why didn't Victoria seek charges or a confrontation with Uncle Robert? She's expecting law enforcement or CPS to get her dad, but what about her abuser? Makes no sense. Now, this person did rate the show 5 stars, so I appreciate that, but there are a few issues, okay? First, these are anonymous. The person leaving the review in this case is Nurse HHR, which is just their username for Apple Podcasts, so I have no idea who this is. Second, anyone who reads this will almost certainly have no idea what story they're talking about or what the details are. Who's Uncle Robert? What happened? And third, there's no way I or anyone else can even respond. You can't leave a comment on a particular review, so the questions are just floating out there with no answers. Like I said, I do appreciate the 5 stars, but if you have questions like this or comments or really anything to say about a particular episode, we have all of that in the Facebook group. In fact, a lot of the guests you hear here on the podcast are actually in that group, so you can ask them questions directly. That's all at whatwasthatlike.com/Facebook. So you're certainly welcome to leave a rating and review, but for an actual discussion, come on over to the What Was That Like Facebook group and join the conversation with over 9,000 other listeners. Graphics for this episode were created by Bob Bretz. Full episode transcription was created by James Lai. And now, we're going to hear this week's listener story. Every episode ends with a story that's been sent in by a listener just like you. And I would love it if you would just record a short personal story on your phone, like 5 to 10 minutes, and email it to me at scott@whatwasthatlike.com. Seriously, we all want to hear it. This story is a nice reminder to enjoy each moment. Stay safe, and I'll see you next week.
My story is about a moment in my life when somebody made a big impact for me that even today I still remember. It was back many years ago when I was a middle-aged mom and I was taking my 13-year-old daughter to Maui. We went to the beach with the intent to snorkel. And so we're on the beach and we're getting all of our snorkel gear on and our flippers, and we're just cracking up because we know how silly we look with all this gear on and then attempting to get down to the water. So here we are with our flippers on, trying to walk backward down to the water, just joking and laughing and having the best time. And it was just such a great memory. So we were down in the water and we had a wonderful time looking at the fish in Maui. And then when we were done, we just hauled on back up to our beach towels. When we got to the beach towels, I noticed that there was a note in my shoe. So I immediately went over And I wasn't really expecting anything. I thought maybe it was a piece of trash or something, but there was a note in there for me. And it simply said, "You are aging with grace." And that moment just stuck with me because I realized that somebody saw the value in me, that I wasn't caring what anybody thought about me, that I was just intent on having the best time I could with my 13-year-old daughter. And we did. We were having a good old time. I wasn't concerned about anything around me but just her and I. And somebody saw that, and that meant so much to me, that they saw the importance of just having a good time, letting go, being in the moment with your child. And that meant so much to me. Well, just as I was about to show my daughter, I lifted it up, the note, to say, "Hey, take a look at this." And then the wind came up at that moment, grabbed it out of my hand, and it went flittering away. And I didn't run after it. I just let it go. And my daughter and I both just thought that maybe that's the way it was supposed to be, that it wasn't something for me to keep and keep looking at. It was just a very kind observation from a stranger that needed to just stay in my memory.